Hello again, you're watching today on eNCA DSTV channel 43 with me, Dan Moyane. Now, South Africans continue to grapple with the high cost of living, from rising transport costs to rising fuel and food prices. It's becoming difficult for people to buy the essentials. The latest essential foods pricing report by the Competition Commission highlights the high and growing concentration along the sunflower oil value chain. According to this report, South Africa is facing the possibility of opportunistic increases in the price of sunflower oil. Well, for more on this, let's speak to the Competition Commission's James Hodge. He's an economist as well, so he understands what the impact of such activities could be. Mr. Hodge, good afternoon. Thank you for your time on today. Welcome to eNCA. First up, can I just ask, just for you to explain, when we talk about the sunflower oil value chain, what are you referring to?
We're referring to the chain from the seeds that go into growing the sunflower seed that's harvested, through the processes that crush the seed, refine it into oil, and onto your shelf at the retailer. So what we've tried to do is look at where in that value chain are prices going up or costs going up, and are they proportionate to the costs that they see as input. So in essence, we're looking to see whether anyone in that chain is being opportunistic by, under the banner of food inflation, pushing up their prices much more than they should, because their costs don't.
So what have you found? What have you found in relation to the sunflower oil value chain? What did you discover?
So in the sunflower oil value chain, we found that at least for this year, the seed prices on our futures exchange hasn't been going up. It's actually been quite stable. But in contrast, the processor prices, so the producers of the oil, the refiners, have increased their prices by over 70%. And so there's just a growing margin between their costs and how much they're selling for. And that spread's grown on our estimation from about 100 Rand to 400 Rand. And in fact, what we found is that the retailers have not pushed through those price increases to the same extent. They've actually tried to absorb some of these cost increases. So they're not necessarily the source of the issue. The issue may well be at the processor side. And we need to get to the detail of that to see if this is purely opportunistic.
Now, if it is purely opportunistic, what can be done? What could a competition commission, for example, do to make sure that on the processing side, those prices are reduced?
Well, we've already started an investigation into cooking oils as well as other basic commodities that have seen big increases. So your maize meals, your breads, etc. And so we have requested information from your processors, your bread manufacturers, and then also the retailers to see where their margins are going. And if we find that these companies or retailers, anyone has taken advantage of this inflationary period, then we will prosecute them and we will fine them. I think in the longer term, we need to get more competition into these sectors and sort out some of the structural problems so we don't have this problem in future.
I mean, processor prices in the sunflower oil value chain, you said, have gone up just on the upper side of 70%. You said 70-odd%. That's a huge chunk. And is it across the board? Do you think there could be collusion here, opportunistic collusion?
Well, it's a concentrated sector, so it could just be the fact that the firms are able to push their prices up, and if no one is trying to compete hard, then they all can do that. Collusion may be another aspect, but it's too difficult to tell without actually investigating properly and determining what is really happening.
Yeah, so you believe that your investigation will allow you to really find out what can happen there, and there will be action taken. You've mentioned other food products. We started with the sunflower oil value chain because that's what you headlined to us in your statement. But what about the other foods? You mentioned maize. What are you finding there?
So maize, the price of maize at this sort of futures exchange has gone up this year, and maize meal has largely tracked it. There's a little bit of growth in the margins somewhere in the chain, but we're not able to identify that. Our investigation should sort that out. In bread, what we found is that the retail margin has actually been growing. So retailers on average, according to Statistics South Africa, earned about a 2 Rand markup on bread in 2019. That's grown to 5 Rand. And we see that growth typically happening in times where the cost has gone down and those costs were not passed on to consumers. So that's another one we're interested in and interested to get an understanding from the retailers what is going on there and what is driving this and whether they have been taking margin at the consumer's expense.
Yeah, it's a very, I think your selection, I was just thinking as you were answering that question, that your selection of the cooking oil, I mean, but the majority of households in South Africa use cooking oil at one point or another of their daily lives. And then bread as well. I mean, it's like a staple. People either try and get hold of bread. And maize meal is used for all kinds of things. What about fresh produce?
So fresh produce we have been tracking. So you're right. On our basket, we look at what is the typical low-income household's basket and what do they use every month. So fresh produce, fruit, vegetables, we've been tracking since the pandemic began. And I suppose there's where there is some good news that we see this year, at least, there haven't been the increases in price. And this is despite the fact that there's probably been some cost pressure on farmers in terms of fuel and fertilizer prices. So there is good news there. Tomato has been a bit more volatile, but at least that has offered some relief, and probably why our food inflation overall is lower than many other countries globally right now, despite the fact it's very high.
Do you have a deadline for when you should conclude your investigation into whether or not there has been opportunistic price increases, particularly on the processor side of sunflower oil?
Well, for these priority investigations, we have an accelerated process. We've already got some information. Some firms are holding back, and we may be forced to summons them. But we would aim to conclude this as quickly as we can. And I think it doesn't rest at the sort of increase. You know, there is some indication globally that prices may start to be coming down. And we want to ensure that those prices, when they do come down, are passed on to consumers. So this will be an ongoing interest for us, I think, for many months to come.
It's good to hear that it's going to be an ongoing one. And if you find any wrongdoing on any of these sunflower oil processing companies, you will take action. There will be consequences.
Of course there will be consequences.
Thank you very much. That's James Hodge speaking on behalf of the Competition Commission. It's an ongoing monitoring situation. The investigation is being prioritized, particularly into the sunflower oil value chain. It's been found, can you believe it, that the companies that they buy the seeds from the farms, the sunflower seeds, to process them so that at the end of the processing, you and I can have some oil that we can cook our food with. The processors of the sunflower oil seeds have hiked their prices by as much as 72%. 72%. That's why the Competition Commission is now investigating. They've already got some information from some of those sunflower oil processing companies, but others are holding back. They might be facing summons, and this investigation has been prioritized. But also the good news from the Competition Commission is that they are going to continue to monitor food prices globally in terms of wheat that gives us bread, for example, and fresh produce and others, to see as the world begins to settle after the pandemic, as the Russia-Ukraine war begins or moves towards a solution, the prices are coming down, you and I are going to benefit as well from those reduced prices. We'll keep tabs with the Competition Commission's ongoing monitoring and investigations.